Your Excellencies, distinguished guests and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to Session 8, Sustainable Maritime Development, the Future Powers of the Ocean. We would like to invite all participants who are still outside the conference room, please go back to the conference hall so we can start our Session 8. Session 8, Sustainable Maritime Development, the Future Powers of the Ocean. The moderator of this session is His Excellency Ambassador Gareth. Panelists include Dr. Ting Tuo, Deputy Director, Research Center for Ocean Law and Policy, National Institute for South China Sea Studies from China. Dr. Fanny Quartum, Vietnam Senior Advisor, Project Rethinking Plastic Circular Economy Solution to Marine Litter. Dr. Kapil Narula, Honorary Adjunct Fellow, National Maritime Foundation, India. Dr. Lance Bate, Senior Fellow, Centre for Strategic Studies, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. Dr. Kondunova Ekaterina, Associate Professor, Department of Asian and African Studies and Senior Expert, ASEAN Center, MGMO University, Russia. And last but not least, Mr. Ang Chin Hop, Senior Researcher, Center for Maritime Economics and Industries, Maritime Institute of Malaysia. Your Excellency, Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great pleasure to join you here for Session 8. As we've heard, we'll be talking about the maritime economy, and I think this will draw together a number of the themes that have featured in previous panels, whether it's around fisheries, or plastics, or transport, or energy, but looking at it from the perspective of opportunity, because some assessments claim that the blue economy, the maritime economy, can be worth up to 5% of GDP globally. And we'll also be looking at it from the perspective of some challenges, not only how we exploit the economic potential of the oceans, but also how we do so in a sustainable way, because the concept of the blue economy is about using resources sustainably and protecting ecosystems. And we've heard before that one of the Sustainable Development Goals, number 14, also refers to conservation and sustainable use of ocean resources. And of course, UNCLOS has a number of articles relating to conservation and protection of the marine environment and stopping pollution. So without further ado, I will move us into the presentations by our experts. And I think we are starting with Dr. Ding Duo, who is joining us from China. Doctor, are you ready to go?
Thank you, Chair. And I need to share my screen. Okay. So before I start my presentation, I would like to express my thanks to the organizers of this event for providing me such an opportunity to share my opinions in this panel. Actually, it is not easy to put together such a big conference during this difficult time with the pandemic. It's really a marvelous job that VAD did it. And today, my topic will focus on the cooperation between the coastal states on maritime environmental protection in the South China Sea. And as we can see, the South China Sea is one of the largest semi-enclosed seas in the world. More than 300 million people live along its coast areas. Among the major marginal seas in the world, the South China Sea also is known for its rich biodiversity resources. 12% of mangrove forests in the world and 30% in Asia are located along the coast in the South China Sea. Also, 20% of coral reefs in the Southeast Asia are located in this area. The South China Sea also carries tremendous geographic importance. 1/3 of the world's shipping passes through the South China Sea, carrying over 3 trillion in trade each year. It contains lucrative fisheries that are important for the food securities for millions in Southeast Asia. Since the South China Sea is the traffic artery connecting the Pacific and Indian Ocean, nearly all airlines and shipping routes through the South China Sea must go through the busy international sea lanes around the Spratly Islands. The picture in the left slide shows that the main sea lanes in the South China Sea, and the picture in the right slide demonstrates the shipping condition of this October. Okay, it's quite busy. And in the past 30 years, the marine environment of the South China Sea has been under serious threat, arising from the fast economic development and high population growth, as well as human activity. For example, according to the estimation of certain research institutions, many mangroves, coral reefs, and seagrass beds in the South China Sea are affected and show a trend of decline. The living environment of marine mammals, such as whales and dolphins, also is seriously threatened. Marine environmental pollution sources in the South China Sea mainly include land-based pollution, ship pollution, dumping, and marine resources development activities. I also found some similar problems during my field research in Hainan province in China. So in order to protect the marine environment, the Chinese government has implemented the Blue Sea Initiative, aka Bihai initiative in recent years, and have achieved good results. The effects of pollution in the South China Sea are regional in nature, which means that coordination and cooperation at the regional level is essential. But the difficulties that the coastal states to the South China Sea face in marine cooperation are obvious but not easy to solve. And I think first, the disputes over territorial sovereignty and maritime delimitation cannot be resolved in a short period of time. And there is insufficient political mutual trust between the coastal states and the countries involved. Second, maritime cooperation mechanisms at different levels have been established, but there are lots of problems such as overlapping functions, insufficient funds, and mechanism fragmentation. The third reason is that the capabilities and the financial support of the coastal states on maritime environmental protection are quite different. So in regard to marine environmental protection, a series of treaties and agreements, including the UNCLOS, have established a specific framework also applied to this area. At the same time, general international law, including the customary international law, also established several basic principles on maritime environmental protection. And according to the Article 123 of the Convention on the Law of the Sea, states bordering an enclosed or semi-enclosed sea should cooperate with each other in the exercise of their rights and in the performance of their duties. In this context, the coastal states of the South China Sea should take some kind of confidence-building measures, as well as conduct bilateral and regional cooperation in the region. In the existing regional cooperation mechanism, ASEAN and China both play an important role. Also, Article 6 of the DOC stipulates that the fields of maritime cooperation, but in the past 10 years, the implementation effect of the DOC, Article 6, it has not been satisfactory. There are many reasons for this problem, including political, economic, and technical factors. Given the complex situation in the South China Sea, an effective way is to promote cooperation in low-sensitive areas among neighboring states through bilateral activities such as marine rescue operation, fishery cooperation, joint scientific research, mutual confidence and cooperation mechanism can be built among the coastal states. As a conclusion, I think it's very important for the implementing maritime cooperation under the DOC framework and the deepen maritime functional cooperation while advancing COC consultation is also a pragmatic and feasible approach for this region. In my opinion, after COC consultation is completed, the coastal states may further discuss to conclude a certain treaty on environmental protection in the South China Sea. So I will stop here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ding Duo, and particularly you are very accurate in your timekeeping. But a couple of things I would like to remark on from your presentation. First, a very important reference to biodiversity and to mangroves and to coral reefs. And we shouldn't forget one of the economic roles of the oceans are, of course, to act as a balance in natural processes, including as a sink for carbon dioxide, and mangroves act as an important factor in preventing natural disasters as well for coastal states. So there are impacts from degrading of the environment which are felt on land. And I would now like to hand over to Dr. Fanny Kerton to talk to us about some of the plastics dimensions of the South China Sea.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam for inviting me to participate to this conference and especially to this panel. My presentation will be from a technical point of view and to present and to share with you a practical initiative to promote the dialogue on environmental issues in the region, especially on plastic solution, as an example of a cross-cooperation among countries in the region to tackle the plastic pollution. I don't know if we can have the PowerPoint presentation. So I will go ahead and expecting that the PowerPoint presentation. So as you know, the maritime environment sustainability is a strategy to prevent from conflicts of interest, to preserve resource, especially fishing stocks, and to assure a sustainable development for population living in coastal areas. Driven by rapid urbanization, economic development, and changing consumption and production patterns, the amount of single-use packaging is rapidly increasing worldwide. At the same time, waste management systems still lack effectiveness in terms of environmentally sound collection, sorting, recycling, energy recovery, and disposal of packaging waste. This trend significantly contributes to marine littering, a growing global threat to marine ecosystems and fishery, as well as the tourism sector, and marine litter, including abandoned, lost, and discarded fishing gear, affect over 800 species in marine and coastal environment. About 60 to 90% of marine litter consists of plastics, of which much come from single-use plastic products and packaging. Microplastic, we have seen in the previous panel, are particularly concerned due to their potential toxicity and size, entering in food chain and drinking water, harming animals, representing a potential threat to human health. East and Southeast Asia belong to the major hotspots worldwide. We have seen it for plastic waste leakage into the ocean. And addressing marine litter requires inclusive, coordinated, and a global response. I'm here to introduce with you a project called Rethinking Plastics, Circular Economy, Marine Litter Solutions. This project is here to contribute to these common efforts. The project is co-funded by the European Union and the Federal Republic of Germany through the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, and is implemented jointly by GIZ and Expertise France in 7 countries, including China, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and Japan and Singapore. This project is to support activities for the transition to a circular economy with a focus on waste prevention and management. I will not go in too much details, but we have mainly 5 areas of action. The first area of action is to enhance the basis for policy dialogue between the European Union, the regional organization, and partner countries in East and Southeast Asia. The second component is to implement activity on managing plastic waste, including extended producer responsibility and other schemes for packaging and plastic products following the waste hierarchy. The third component is to work on specific sustainable consumption and production of plastic, including eco-design, reuse, recyclability standards for plastic recyclates, as well as alternatives to plastics and the use of microplastics in products. The component number 4 aims to enhance effort for the reduction of litter from sea-based source, including port reception facilities for waste and ships, fishing for litter scheme, marine litter from aquaculture and fishing gear. Increasing awareness of public authorities and citizens about sustainable consumption and production of plastic and their impact on the environment is our last component. These activities are implemented in the 5 main countries, of course, in their respective context, but we expect to have this platform to exchange best practices from European Union, but also exchanges among the 5 countries. I would like to present you 4 initiatives as a pilot activities that we expect to develop in Vietnam as an example, but of course some similar activities and pilot projects are developed in the other countries with more than 25 pilot activities, and we expect that at the end of the project we can share our different results and to see concretely where are the challenges, where are the solutions, and where are the perspectives for a better dialogue. In Vietnam, we are implementing 4 pilot activities, one specifically on the developing EPR extended producer responsibility scheme in Ho Chi Minh City, and this project aims to analyze and to increase the collection, the sorting and recycling of plastic packaging to reduce the environmental leakage, and it aims to create a platform among the stakeholders from private to public stakeholders, but also formal and informal stakeholders. The second activities will be to create an alliance of supermarkets in Hanoi to encourage the reduction of the use of plastic bags single-use plastic bags. And the last two activities focus more on ships waste management. We are developing a pilot project in Cat Lai in Ho Chi Minh City to improve the existing system of ship waste management and to encourage Japan to comply with the MARPOL Convention and to improve the regulation and the technical guidelines regarding the collection of the garbage from the ships, which will have a very strong impact on marine litter. As I mentioned, similar initiatives are in development in the other countries. And the last pilot project that we are conducting is to develop a fishing for litter scheme in the province of Viet to encourage fishermen to collect the waste garbage and to bring it back to the shore and to develop some technical and institutional mechanisms. These very concrete examples that we are implementing in Vietnam and in the region are there to develop the best practices, develop handbooks and guidelines for the national government, and in order to consolidate national regulation, but on the main and shared principle based on the scientific based. So these are a few examples. Sorry that I cannot show some slide and some picture of the different projects. And I hope that we can have the opportunity, maybe in the discussion, to go in more details. So there are some practical, as I mentioned, pilot project working on different consolidation of the regulation at the national level, and we expect to share among the countries our different experience. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was extremely clear and I think highlights the complexity of the task with land-based plastic pollution, sea-based pollution. And also you highlighted that this, on the one hand, is about reducing the impact on ecosystems, but also the role that this plays in tourism, for instance, where, as we can see in Vietnam, ocean tourism, beach tourism is a very important part of the economy, and making sure that that's a clean and attractive product is of extreme importance. So let's move on to our third speaker, Commander Dr. Kapil Narula, joining us from India.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Ward, for inviting me to present some of my views on the subject, and also to the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam and the organizers for including this important aspect in the conference agenda. So I'll start with sharing my screen, and are you able to see the screen?
Yes, we can.
And in the full screen mode, okay. So what I intend to do is that I'll first start with clarifying the concept of sustainability and giving some objective parameters for classifying an activity to be sustainable or unsustainable. And in that, I draw some of the sustainability principles from the natural step, which is an organization, which says that in a sustainable society, nature is not subject to systematically increasing concentration of substances from the Earth's crust. Therefore, all extractive activities such as offshore oil and gas are unsustainable. Similarly, it should not lead to sustainably increasing concentration of substances produced by the society. Therefore, all waste, all plastics which end up in the ocean, all emissions from shipping and oil leakages, oil spills, which increases concentration of substances, is again unsustainable. And then they say that there should be no systematically increasing degradation by physical means. And hence, all coastal activities which undertake, which lead to degradation all underbed sea mining, which lead to degradation, are also unsustainable. So all these activities primarily are unsustainable, but the problem is that these are monetizable activities, while all these activities which are sustainable are non-monetary services, and there is the challenge. I'd also like to revisit the concept of strong and weak sustainability, and we know that there are 5 types of capital: manufactured, human, social, natural, and financial. Financial capital is not per se of capital, but it only allows interchange between different forms of capital. And the concept of weak sustainability implies complete substitutability between these type of capital stocks. So you can destroy natural stocks to increase manufactured capital or financial capital. And that's why the model of sustainable development, which is the 3 circles model, and the intersection between these, I think is not appropriate, because here economy can exist outside the environmental limits. And therefore the intersection becomes less and less, and more focus is given to the economy. Instead, I would say that strong sustainability, where there is no substitutability between different types of capital, and which promotes a complementary nested model where all forms of capital are actually residing inside the natural capital, is the right model to be adopted. And hence we see that in actual practice, all of the activities are clubbed up here are very, very weakly sustainable, but we intend to move towards strong sustainability. And that brings me, after clarifying the concept of sustainability, to some of the sectors. And I would say that marine renewable energy is a great alternative to offshore oil and gas. And currently offshore oil and gas contribute to about 35% of the global oil and gas production. But the technical potential of marine renewable energy is very, very high, and only next to solar energy potential. But the problem is that there are many challenges in extracting or harnessing these energy resources. And to give the example of India, which started with analyzing offshore wind, India's potential is estimated to be about 150 gigawatts, primarily off the coast of Tamil Nadu and Gujarat. They plan to have about 5 gigawatt of installed capacity by 2022 and about 30 gigawatts by 2030. The first steps have already been taken, and in 2014, the project facilitating offshore wind in India has been started with financing from the EU. And about 2 years later, in 2016, the first offshore wind farm project in India, which was off the coast of Gujarat, about 70 square kilometers of area has been identified. The expression of interest was for about 1 gigawatt installed capacity, but the tender was only for about 200 megawatts. And the site is about 14 to 18 meters deep. But the progress, as we see from 2014, it's already been 6 years, it's pretty slow. And one of the important reasons is that the cost of marine renewables as compared to solar PV is about 2 to 4 times higher. And that is a very big challenge as compared to solar PV installation. The next part I would like to focus is on sustainable shipping. And we know that shipping uses one of the most dirtiest fuel. And the sulfur limits in fuel oil was initially reduced from 4.5% to 3.5%. And very recently, on the 1st of this year, to 0.5% across the globe. But we also have emission control areas which started in 2010, and in 2015 the sulfur use for ships inside emission control areas was reduced to about 0.1%. And these were primarily found in 6 areas of the North American, Canadian, Caribbean coast and in the EU. And I think showing a leadership role, 3 emission control areas were adopted by the PRC, which were in the Pearl River Delta, Yangtze River Delta, and Circumbohai Sea in January 2019. These were further extended earlier this year to inland river delta basins, and in January 2022, they would be extended to the coastal Hainan region. And taking a cue from that, South Africa adopted 4 control zones, and inside these 4 control zones, the emission control regimes for ships are at par with the European standards. And currently they are only while berthing or anchoring, but from January 2022, the entire coastal zones will be inside this area. But how do we finance these activities? And one innovative financing mechanism was shown by Seychelles, where in 2018, it had a debt for nature swap, in which 27 million of sovereign debt was swapped for protecting oceanic spaces, about 81,000 square miles. And these areas were debarred from fishing, oil exploration, and commercial development, and activities for restoration of coral reefs, mangroves, conservation, marine parks have to be taken. So this is one innovative financing mechanism which was shown to the world, and that's the right way to go ahead with conservation activities. So I would conclude by saying that mostly maritime activities in their current form are very weakly sustainable. Marine renewable energy and emission control areas could be adopted in the Indian Ocean region and the South China Sea. Financing sustainable maritime development is essential to promote such activities, and we should only look at strongly sustainable maritime activities and move away from weakly sustainable maritime activities. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Narula. I'm particularly glad to see that you raised the issue of offshore wind. Talking from the perspective of my country, the UK, we already have over 12 gigawatts of offshore wind installed, and we're committed to increasing that to 40 gigawatts by 2030. So at the moment, it's about 15% of our energy use, but that could go up to half of our energy use. And there is huge potential for offshore wind in the South China Sea. Vietnam alone has a potential of over 100 gigawatts of usable offshore wind. Taiwan is doing well in installing offshore wind. And you're right to highlight that at the beginning of the process, it can be more expensive than solar. But in the UK, we've shown that the more you build, the more the price comes down. So it's now much cheaper than fossil fuel alternatives. So thank you for raising that. Maybe we'll come back to that in the discussion. Could I now call on Dr. Lance Beath, who's joining us from New Zealand. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can I just confirm that you can hear me, Ambassador Ward?
Yes, I can.
That's good. Let me begin just by acknowledging the splendid efforts of the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam in hosting this conference. It's a delight to be able to participate, and it's good to see so many people in the audience, and I know there are many more online. Let me also thank my fellow panelists and, of course, the chair as well. I have submitted a short paper, and I'm not planning to summarize that. I want to go straight into the second of the themes of my paper. My paper was around risk and opportunity, but I think that earlier speakers yesterday and earlier today have covered off the risk aspects of the South China Sea. And to lift our spirits, I wanted to speak about a particular opportunity that I think is of great interest. My background, I should say, by way of introduction, is I was a quantum and physical chemist in my early days, and then I spent a misspent youth in the New Zealand Foreign Service. These days, I'm in the Strategic Centre at Victoria University as a senior fellow. My interest, as I think about opportunities in the oceans, is I will summarize this way. We all know that the sea, or the world's oceans, already act as the world's largest carbon sink. So an obvious area for us, I think, to be thinking about is the extent to which the world's oceans, including, of course, the South China Sea, could be augmented in their carbon sink function without further acidifying or warming the oceans. Now, is this possible? There are a number of avenues to explore, including enhanced kelp, seaweed plantings, and so forth. But this is not the particular opportunity I want to talk about. I think the more interesting opportunity actually is to ask ourselves whether there may be lessons that the sea can teach us if we look at some of the fundamental physics and chemistry of some of the deep sea living organisms of the sea. Let's just think about solar energy and its efficiency. I think I'm right in saying that the most efficient land-based solar arrays only manage an efficiency of around 17 to 18%. That's actually quite impressive if we look at the efficiency of natural photosynthesis in plants, which are down at about 1 or 2%. And you might ask yourself, how could natural photosynthetic processes be so inefficient? And I think the answer is because there are plenty of plants and there are plenty of photons hitting those plants. They haven't been under evolutionary pressure to do better. So that's my starting point. Plants are averaging at around 1 to 2% efficiency, converting the sun's rays to stored chemical energy. Solar cells up at around 17 or 18%, I think. And we have to ask ourselves, are there any natural systems that we could find in nature that do better than plants and even outstrip our man-made solar arrays? Now, some of you here may actually know that there is an answer in nature. There is a species of deep-sea bacteria whose natural efficiencies in converting the rare photons that reach the deep sea are up at almost 100%, nearly 100% conversion efficiency. We have a centre of research at Otago University in New Zealand called the Centre of Photonics and Quantum Chemistry. And they, along with colleagues elsewhere around the world, have been pioneering a branch of science called quantum effects in biology. Now, they tell me that this species of bacteria can only be operating at 100% efficiency or near it on the basis of quantum effects. And so the challenge is to ask ourselves, could we understand, through the application of basic science, how these quantum effects take place? And could we then apply that understanding to increase the natural efficiency of plants? And perhaps of more interest in the context of this conference, could we increase the natural efficiency of man-made solar arrays so that we could create super efficient new generation solar arrays? And that, of course, the interest, I think, in that is that it could open the key to green hydrogen and the faster transition from natural gas, oil systems. So my question to the conference and the proposal, in fact, is that perhaps what we really should be doing is thinking in terms of a Manhattan-scaled project led by, and we ask ourselves, who could lead such a project? And I think the natural answer would be China, given its excellence in basic science and its strong capital base. China obviously could be assisted by India, given its strong science and capital base. And wouldn't it be terrific if we could interest the United States in joining a global consortium, in fact, to employ the best scientists and engineers in trying to understand the secrets, quantum level secrets, of deep sea bacteria. So if we do that, as I say, it could open the way to super efficient land-based solar cells, would supply super cheap, super abundant energy, which could be used to electrolyze water, to produce green hydrogen, and therefore open the way to the much vaunted future of a hydrogen economy. So I'm going to leave it at that, Ambassador, because I would like to leave lots of time for questions and discussion. And but remember, you heard it here first, a proposal for a deep sea bacteria project led by the scientists and engineers and financed by the capitalists in the world. There we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beath. You are certainly correct. From my perspective, I heard it here first. It's an extremely exciting idea and a big challenge for us here, and one that I hope we can take up through various channels. Nature-based solutions are key to the climate change challenge we face, whether on land or at sea. But I was not aware of the incredible efficiency of deep sea bacteria, and that is something which could unlock yet another energy source that is, as we've heard from previous speakers, sustainable, unlike the hydrocarbons. Thank you very much. I will move on now to our next speaker, joining us from Russia, Dr. Yekaterina Koldunova. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear Chair, dear distinguished participants, dear colleagues, let me start with thanking the organizers at the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam for inviting me to speak today, and let me congratulate Vietnam and other ASEAN member states for concluding the RCEP agreement. So let me double check that you can well see the presentation.
Yes, we can.
Okay? Thank you. So now I'll turn to my topic on Russia and Southeast Asia in the National Blue Economy competition, prospects for cooperation and implications for the South China Sea. There are 3 points I would like to raise. The first one is the importance and growing complexity of the blue economy issue. Secondly, I will speak about Russian maritime priorities and its blue economy capabilities, which might be useful for establishing or enhancing the existing cooperation with ASEAN countries. And finally, I will turn to the avenues of already existing cooperation, which might help to tackle certain problematic issues in the South China Sea, and final observations on the point. So the first quarter of the century became an important milestone in terms of the maritime activities worldwide. We now have the cutting-edge IT, transportation technologies, space monitoring and satellite positioning, and all this created unprecedented opportunities for the world ocean exploration and governance. But still we have that many problems and even more, and the speakers before me today and yesterday pointed out to so many challenges which we have. Indeed, the blue economy focused on the long-term use of the ocean resources generates huge revenues for many countries and regional blocs. And unfortunately, sometimes the revenue seeking and the geopolitical considerations, as we see, they overshadow the problems we have been discussing in this session and the previous one as well. So what we have as a result? On the other hand, the Ambassador Ward mentioned the huge revenues and the number of the world GDP generated by the blue economy. On the opposite side, we have the rising pressure of the human activities on the maritime domain aggravated by world oceans, which aggravated the world oceans' ecological health. Russia and Southeast Asian states have access to vast maritime areas. Russia has very long maritime boundaries which stretch for more than 38,000 kilometers, while 23 out of our internal regions have access to the sea. So that's a great geographical potential. And the ASEAN region is has a cumulative coastline of 173,000 kilometers, and it's a home for huge archipelagic states of Indonesia and the Philippines. At the same time, as I mentioned, the geopolitical rivalries, unsettled issues in the South China Sea, they dominate the political agenda, they influence the economic agenda, and unfortunately, they limit the ecological agenda. Let me now turn to the current situation in Russia and what do our policymakers think about the maritime domain. And here I need to refer to several documents which define Russia's priorities in the sphere of its naval policy and maritime exploration. They include the Maritime Doctrine of 2015, the State Naval Policy of 2017, and the Strategy for the Development of Russia's Maritime Activities up to 2030. So these are complex documents and very comprehensive ones, so I will not be going into details. Probably in the Q&A session, we will have the opportunity to discuss this. And in the paper which I submitted to the organizers, there are more details. I'll just want to highlight here that the Maritime Doctrine of 2015 has identified the functional directions of development and Russian national maritime policy, which include maritime transportation development, ocean exploration, the maritime research and naval activities, but also the regional priorities and directions, which cover many areas: Atlantic, Arctic, Pacific, Caspian, Indian, and Antarctic areas. So here Pacific section emerges only as one of the directions, but it doesn't mean that we cannot enhance our cooperation here. And add to this, quite recently, in the early 2010s, here in Russia, we have a wide nationwide discussion on the marine spatial planning. So the testing ground is now the Gulf of Finland, where different pilot practices of the marine planning with the aim to make this area more sustainable are emerging. So why not to think about this kind of cooperation and planning with our ASEAN partners and colleagues in broader East Asia. So as for the prospects and the existing cooperation, I need to say that the ongoing projects and cooperation in the sphere of blue economy and in the maritime domain in general include trade, maritime defense coordination, and joint oceanographic research. Ship, boats, and floating structures constitute one of the top ASEAN exports to Russia, number 4 to be exact, in 2017. Singapore remains the best connected port to the Russian Far East main port on Vladivostok, and Singapore is very attentive to what is going in Arctic, and I will mention this later in my speech. We have also a number of very good achievements in our cooperation with Vietnam. And here on this slide, you can see the research vessel Academician Aparin, to translate it. And there were several exploration expeditions already concluded in 2007, 2013, and in 2019, another research vessel, Academician Lavrentiev, also had a very profound joint project realization. That expedition was, the one on the Academician Lavrentiev research vessel, was a pioneer in finding the mineral ecite in the South China Sea and explored anomalies of gravitational and magnetic fields and specifics of local bacteria to echo the previous speaker. So I think that the most promising and really interesting directions should be the marine spatial planning, as I said, because we saw plenty of evidence that it needs more careful national planning and, more importantly, even probably the international cooperation. And Arctic emerges here as a final point because we saw how intensive the traffic is in the South China Sea. And I think that redirecting, of course, not all the traffic to the Northern Sea route, but at least a certain segment of it will have a significant importance for alleviating the situation in South China Sea. Just to conclude, I think that the expansion of this kind of cooperation, of course, will not solve the problem of the South China Sea overnight, but it will definitely go in line with ASEAN approach of maintaining proper balance between different external actors involved in the regional dynamics. I think that there is plenty of cooperation for Russia, ASEAN, European Union interactions, even though we don't have that very good relations with the European Union currently in the political front. But still, I think that the ability to look beyond the geopolitics is becoming essentially important for us today. And if we fail to do that, we will have plenty of other challenges, and we will not be speaking so calmly as we do today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koldunova. And I think you have rightly highlighted the potential for joint research with partners from outside ASEAN and the South China Sea, whether that's Russia or other leading research nations. And you also highlighted responsible fishing practices, and this has been touched on in previous sessions, but the drop in the biodiversity and the fish stocks in the South China Sea not only is an ecological problem, but it's also an economic problem because the fish catch has also collapsed. And there's experience from elsewhere about how you can, with proper management, you can reverse that direction. So I'd like us to move to our final speaker now, Commander Ang Chin Hup, who's joining us from Malaysia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the introduction. And also I'd like to thank the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam and the participants, both online and offline, for participating in this conference. I'd like to share the experience of the Indian Ocean Dream Association Blue Economy as a model for the South China Sea. My talk will be about the ocean, and I'd like to recommend this model of IORA's blue economy for the South China Sea. From Malaysia, where we are an active member of 22 member states of IORA, and I was privileged to represent the country in a number of IORA meetings. As we know, oceans present an opportunity for nations to yield economic and social benefits in a wide range of resources. And ocean economy in the Indian Ocean is gaining increasing importance in the coastal nations, least development. So all the member states of IORA are now current. For today's forum, I'd like to share from our experience of following the development of blue economy in IORA, and also to share the experience of member states in the IORA in the blue economy.
Commander Hup, could I suggest that if you turn off your video, that will improve the quality of the sound, I think.
Okay, in that case, I will just read without the video. Is it okay? Sorry for the introduction. So I'd like to repeat what is mentioned just now. I'd like to take this opportunity to deliberate the development of blue economy in the Indian Ocean Dream Association. And I also like to share the experience and also challenges faced by IORA member states for the countries bordering the South China Sea as the blue economy model. And As for the development of IORA member states, blue economy, I'd like to share the essential bias of IORA, i.e. Australia from 2013 to 2015, Indonesia 2015 to 2017, and South Africa in 2017 to 2019, in which, as for the case of Australia, they was instrumental in the initiation of the blue economy into the association through inclusion of the blue economy as one of the two cross-cutting priority areas in IORA and the first declaration of the blue economy in Mauritius in 2015. Subsequently, Indonesia played an important role in formulating the blue economy in the IORA Action Plan. And just recently in South Africa, under their leadership, chairmanship, IORA member states gathered at Durban in 2017 and outlines their national oceans net economy. Leaders of IORA member states gathered in Jakarta and sought to strengthen collaboration in the blue economy, as well as their commitment to implement actionable blue economy projects such as financing the ocean economy, R&D, technology transfer, sharing of information, exchange program, and many other things under the blue economy projects. Next, I'd like to talk about the challenges by member states of IORA in implementing blue economy in 4 aspects. Number 1 is about their challenges in the port and shipping sector. As we all know, Indian Ocean is an important sea line of communication between the resource-rich Middle East and the emerging economic superpower, China. Thus, it is significant in the global economy, particularly ports and shipping. But in the Indian Ocean, although the port sector in the ocean region continues to grow, some member states struggle to keep pace with rapid development in terms of financing, infrastructure, and ports. And for the shipping sector, on the other hand, is faced with growing nomination of European shipping companies in their shipping alliances. Now, mega vessels are also an issue as ports in particularly the Indian Ocean, to service their needs and requirements. Second aspect of the challenges faced by countries in IORA in implementing the blue ocean is in the fisheries and aquaculture sector. As we all know, fisheries are one of the key resources of the Indian Ocean as it contributes to the livelihood of coastal population, besides being a food source to hundreds of millions in the region. And areas in the Indian Ocean are either fully exploited or overexploited, and fish stocks are rapidly depleting. As a case of aquaculture, while the sector also contributes to the economy, the sector's resources and technological capabilities remains lacking. Third is in the sector of
I'm sorry.
IORA member states
Commander,
highly dependent on imports for causing global.
So we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. If you can try one more time to just finish up. We've got the renewable energy slide. Let's have one more attempt. If it doesn't work, we will try and come back to you later on. So, Commander Hupp, over to you one more time. Okay, I understand that there have been some connection difficulties with our colleague in Malaysia, but nevertheless we managed to capture a number of his points around the importance of investment in ports and shipping. So I think what I'd like to do now is perhaps bring in one or two of our discussants. So I wonder, do we have Dr. Youngwook Ryu online from Singapore? Are there any comments that you would like to make, Dr. Ryu, about the presentations that you've heard? Any questions you'd like to pose?
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right, so first of all, many thanks to the organizers for the invitation to be a discussant, and also thanks to the panelists for the excellent presentations. So I'm not an environmental scientist. My expertise is East Asian international relations and ASEAN affairs. And I'd like to make the following comments in that capacity of mine. The first point that I want to make is why we pay a great deal of attention to interstate cooperation in the South China Sea. I think the domestic regulation of activities of various societal groups is equally, if not more, important. The concerned governments must seek to promote interstate cooperation and at the same time make greater efforts to manage and regulate domestic activities by local stakeholders. And this is true for the issue of sustainable maritime development. And in this regard, I was very happy to hear the stories about the, what the Vietnamese government has been trying to do. The second point is that we know that both ASEAN and China signed a declaration for coastal and marine environmental protection in the South China Sea in 2017, but perhaps due to emerging geopolitics and disagreement over the maritime boundaries and jurisdictions, there has not been any concrete action plan and policies to date. Having said that, I think it's very important for the concerned states do whatever they can, no matter how small it might be, to promote sustainable maritime development. And in this aspect, I think 2 points are very essential in my opinion. First, the environment and sustainability aspects of the South China Sea disputes must be depoliticized. And one way this can be done is to get more scientists and environmental experts involved in the decision-making process and various efforts aimed at sustainable development. And the second is to establish basic facts about the marine and environmental conditions of the South China Sea, such as fishing stocks, depletion rate, environmental data, and so on and so forth. And this can be done by ASEAN states themselves without cooperation of China, individually, bilaterally, or regionally within the framework of ASEAN. If cooperation from China can be obtained, then it will be even better. The final point I want to make is that ASEAN must take initiative in promoting sustainable maritime development, as the ASEAN countries will bear the brunt of the cost of failing to do so. In this conference, right, we've heard a lot of talk about ASEAN centrality, and I think this talk must now translate into concrete actions by ASEAN itself. So while it might be too much to expect ASEAN to play a central role in managing US-China great power conflict in the South China Sea or resolving the sovereignty disputes, right, in the South China Sea, ASEAN can be a central actor and be in the driver's seat when it comes to non-traditional security issues such as sustainable maritime development and environmental protection. So it is time for ASEAN to establish itself as a relevant and meaningful organization and actor by initiating and implementing concrete action plans and policies for sustainable maritime development. Let me stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So you have identified a key blockage, which is how to operationalize or put into action measures to increase sustainability or reduce unsustainable practices. And you've pointed towards ASEAN centrality, and Obviously, you're speaking from Singapore. We've had a panelist from Malaysia. Most of the other panelists are outside ASEAN, but could I see, would any of the panelists like to comment on the suggestion that really this type of cooperation has to first and foremost be driven from within ASEAN before it can realistically be worked on with external partners? Please raise your hand if you would like to comment. Okay, I don't see any hands raised at the moment, but we do have another discussant who I would like to bring in. Do we have Dr. Takashi Hasoda available, maybe joining us from the Czech Republic?
Yes, thank you very much, Ambassador Ward. Can I hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you very much, Vietnam Diplomatic Academy, to organize a quite nice occasion to know the opinions and the current situation about South China Sea issues. And thank you so much, all speakers, for well-prepared and suggestive presentation, including a wide range of aspects. According to expert in session yesterday, the impact of the COVID pandemic is limited in the development of the security situation in South China Sea. However, the pandemic has brought more attention to the role of the state and has increased the expectation to bigger responsibility of the government or authority, although it does not eliminate the importance of the NGOs, enterprises, and the private sector. And in general, in a debate about the blue economy, everyone agrees with the general argument and has a euphoria to tackle serious problems such as maritime environmental protection, sustainable fishery, and resources management with partners. However, when it comes to more detailed multilateral level discussion, it is so difficult for coastal countries to overcome traditional obstacles of sovereignty, national interests, sense of maritime jurisdiction, and historical and territorial dispute. In this context, scientific data or information sharing will help some extent, and education will be also important element to pave the way to cooperate and make trust. However, I think ethical arguments about the importance of non-monetary activities and economic incentive are not enough to realize functional regional cooperation for blue economy, and the political willingness and political incentive for others, especially a kind of concession for depoliticizing the issue, will play important roles in getting countries to cooperate. In particular, what is needed politically to overcome obstacles in the South China Sea, such as maritime boundary, China's legal baseless 9-dash line, which is concluded by 2016 PCA ruling, or a different interpretation about UNCLOS definitions for creating actually functional cooperation mechanisms and mutual understanding between countries in South China Sea. It is crucial to prevent so-called tragedy of the commons in that sea. So I would like to ask speakers to share your personal view on what political initiative or political incentive for others are required by governments related with South China Sea to shape and foster a real regional cooperation for sustainable blue economy. And I hope blue economy approach will be some breakthrough for current political competition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hasoda. Do any of the panelists want to comment on initiatives that they think can break through some of the political and sovereignty barriers that currently exist? So perhaps it would be in some of the areas of pollution or plastics. How much potential do we think there is for cooperation on some of these less contentious issues? I see, Dr. Ding Duo, you have raised your hand. Would you like to make some comments?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the commentaries for our speakers. I would like to echo Professor Yun Wu. And if I'm right, I remember there was a similar question was asked this morning about the Chinese maritime claim in the South China Sea and the maritime cooperation initiative or mechanism implementation. In my opinion, the cooperation of the coast countries to protect the marine environment does not depend on the settlement of the territorial sovereignty and the maritime delimitation disputes. And cooperation on the marine environmental protection can be carried out first based on sufficient political trust and political will. The issue of, since the scholars from Japan just mentioned the arbitral tribunal's award, I think the issue of the arbitration award involves the jurisdiction of the tribunal, the nature of the disputes, and the interpretation of the relevant articles of the UNCLOS. Although I have a background in international law, I will not talk too much about the arbitration in this session. But as to the fishing issue or marine environmental protection issue, I would like to share a point, and that is China has implemented a summer fishing moratorium for more than 2 decades. The annual fishing ban also covers the waters north to 12 degree north latitude of the South China Sea. As we all know, Vietnam and the Philippines have protested against China's fishing ban every year, but actually the summer fishing ban has played a very important role in the conservation of fishery resources in the South China Sea. So I think for the coastal states in this region, it is necessary to find a balance between the demonstration of maritime claim and the joint conservation of fishery resources. That is my opinion on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think we also have a hand raised from Professor Koldunova. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 brief reactions to the points raised by our discussants, Mr. Young-Woo Kru and Mr. Takashi Hosoda. I do pretty much agree, and I fully agree with what Young-Woo Kru said about start with yourself here if you want a real progress. But the problem is that indeed, domestic efforts are important, and that's great that Vietnam is on the process of reshaping certain economic activities in order to take into account the ecological needs. But the ecosystems do not recognize political borders. And you, of course, can try to do something in a very limited space, but then you will face different kinds of problems. As for the point raised by Mr. Takashi Hosoda about the political initiatives which are necessary, I think that ASEAN has an instrument, the ASEAN community building, and the kind of relations ASEAN has built with the external partners. So it's just high time to add or reactivate ecological domain in the economic community blueprint and sociocultural community blueprint, and probably indeed to try to focus on these issues more in the relations with the dialogue partners. But of course, I'm not in a position to recommend or enforce something. That's just my personal observation on this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koldunova. I'm going to abuse my position as chair to ask a question about marine protected areas, but I do see there is a hand up in the audience. So do we have a roving microphone to go to the audience? Is that how we work? So sorry, I can't read your plaque from this distance, but please do put your question to the panel.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much, panelists, for your excellent presentation. I have one question to Dr. Ding Duo. And I agree with you that the regional cooperation is very important for sustainable development of the South China Sea. And I think the PCA Awards for the case between Philippines and China is a part of international law, and it together with UNCLOS pave an excellent way for regional cooperation in the South China Sea. Do you think that we should use UNCLOS and PCA Awards to set up a platform for international cooperation for South China Sea? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. That also echoes with a question which has come in on the chat. We've had a question from Miko Lagarde, based in Australia, I think, which also references the PCA ruling on environmental damage caused. So I will ask the panel if anyone wants to comment on that. But the one point I would like to put into the discussion is just to highlight an initiative which is working in other parts of the ocean outside the South China Sea, and that is the 30 by 30 initiative. This is an initiative to establish marine protected areas over 30% of the oceans by 2030. And there's a lot of evidence, scientific evidence, which shows that by establishing marine protected areas, you increase the economic productivity of other parts of the ocean. So it's win-win. It not only protects and rebuilds ecosystems in some parts, but it makes the fishing and other economic opportunities better in other areas. And the UK is particularly committed to that objective. So let me check if we have time for one or two answers from the panel. So we have a couple of minutes left. So would anyone like to respond either on the point of the value of using the PCA ruling as a basis for cooperation, or the question of whether maritime protected areas could be used more in the South China Sea? At the moment, they're not used very much. So I think Dr. Ding Duo would like to comment.
Thank you, Chair. And in my opinion, I think the human activities, human activities will inevitably have an impact on the marine environment. But I think it is important to evaluate the environmental impact and limit its impact to a minimum. After the construction of the islands and reefs, China has also made a lot of efforts in restoring coral reefs and seagrass beds and protecting the, for example, sea turtles habitats. What am I thinking is that given the fact that the Chinese official position that the tribunals award has not legal binding, and I think China and the coastal states should base the maritime cooperation on not on the actual ruling, but on the Article 1, 2, 3 of the convention which provides the coordination and cooperation around the for the coastal states around the semi-closed sea. That is probably a feasible approach for the China and ASEAN members. If we still emphasize the ruling arbitral tribunal's view, that is not a constructive approach to promote low sensitive cooperation in maritime protection. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I would like to offer the opportunity for any final comments to our Malaysian panelist, Dr. Ang Chin Hup. We got to hear most of your presentation, but then had some interruptions. Would you like a final 1 minute to give any further assessment from your side?
Thank you, Ambassador. I'd like.
Hello. Go ahead.
Opportunity to mention straight to the.
I'm very sorry, Commander, but unfortunately the problems we experienced earlier seem to be continuing. We hope that the connection to Malaysia can be restored, but I think our time has now run out on this panel. I'd like to thank everybody on the panel and move us on to the next session. Thank you very much.